We're joined by Nate Snyder, who focuses on national security and served as a counterterrorism official under the Obama administration. He joins us now via Skype from Washington. Nate, really appreciate you being here for this story. When you look at how these hackers were able to pull this off, the level of sophistication is incredible. They apparently used 34 servers in 20 countries to mask the origin. But how they got in seemed relatively easy. They found a flaw in the security system. So what do we know, though, about the intended use of that information?
Well, the intended use of that information has to do with stealing intellectual property and just getting more and more data on the citizens here in the United States. This has fit a significant pattern that we've seen with the People's Republic of China. If you remember the Office of Personnel Management hack years previous, to where thousands and thousands and thousands of background investigations on government officials and those with security clearances were also stolen by the Chinese government. This has also fit a pattern of economic espionage as well. That fits a pattern of behavior also with the Chinese government. So unfortunately, this is nothing new. This just fits into the normal behavior of the Chinese government wanting to learn more about the U.S., steal information, steal intellectual property, and do anything they can do to get a leg up on the U.S.
The FBI's deputy director, to your point, says China is one of the most significant threats to our security today. What does this whole incident tell us about the vulnerabilities that exist, and not just corporations, but our own government, and how China is seeking to expose that?
I think it has considerable, it's a considerable threat. I think we also need to look at our allies too. The UK and Canada were also affected by the Equifax hack, but also look at other aspects of Huawei, say, for instance, and they're standing up the new 5G network on a global basis, to where it's well known that Huawei officials have ties with the Chinese government, are former intelligence officials, and are looking to corner the market, not only to get data on our allies and the U.S. itself, but to further in this pattern as well. So again, this is concerning, not only the sophistication in which we saw this hack take place, with the statistics that you mentioned before, but I think also it can affect, say, for instance, how we share intelligence with our allies, how we share intelligence broadly, and what information are we deeming as secure, and also in some cases, say, for instance, I know a lot of folks may know the app that's very popular, TikTok, also been created by the Chinese government as well, to where the general public is offering their information voluntarily in some cases, and the Chinese government can also take, say, for instance, data from facial recognition and various other things. So again, unfortunately, this is not surprising, but it does really provide a real threat on how we share information moving forward, and how we consider, privacy implications, and also what's secure.
Nate, when you put all of that into context, it really is quite disturbing. I mean, I look at my 10-year-old niece who's on TikTok all day. You fly into the airport in Detroit and you see Mandarin and Chinese signs and lettering everywhere, and you know that China is heavily investing in Detroit. You look at their hacking capabilities. What sort of a warfare is the United States trying to protect itself from China? I mean, what does all of this look like in the future?
Well, that really depends on the government response here. Obviously, the Department of Justice, as mentioned earlier, is going to work for swift justice on the four suspects. But I think it really is a wake-up call to the government and also to private sector partners on what are we doing not only to combat and counter these kinds of attacks, but what's our answer to it? What's the alternative? What's our alternative to the 5G network? What is private industry as well as the government doing to further user protections, to further policy or privacy legislation, but also to look at various other sort of countermeasures that can be employed, not only to protect folks here in the homeland and say, for instance, give more abilities to the Department of Homeland Security's cyber security and infrastructure agency, but also what are we doing as a unified policy in regards to countering cyber attacks like this? So I think it raises a lot of questions. But I think a lot of what may be in store is what this administration does in response, other than just prosecution and investigation. We really need to start thinking forward on what does a policy look like in order to enable these protections, but also in some cases enable an alternative that we can point people to in regards to private industry and also government.
Nate Snyder, you make a lot of great points. We really appreciate your expertise and analysis.